Hello, Aethon fans and authors. 'Tis the season to release some new books. Hopefully, all of your Christmas preparations are going well and got all your gifts wrapped. Everyone's normally shocked and appalled that I have my gifts wrapped like a full week early before Christmas. So I'm kind of an early prepper, but we're doing three book releases. Today we had one released on Thursday by Blake Arthur Peel. We're going to have him on the show here in a couple of minutes. First, we're going to get into a military sci-fi. We have Territory Wars Book 3 Odin by Devin C. Ford. And the reviews on this one are amazing. I'm going to read one real quick. This one is for Book 1 Scourge. This book is worth the 5 stars just for the dialogue alone. Exceptionally done. This is an extremely and well-written, realistic look at the future of ground war several hundred years in the future. And the interesting thing is it isn't all that different than now, especially for the Marines fighting them. No fluff here with very little futuristic weapons, technologies, or anything else that some authors like to dress their stories up with. This book here resonates with the basic grunt mentalities that would be familiar to any Marine that fought at Chosin, Iwo Jima, or at the Battle of Belleau Wood 50, 70, or 100 years ago. Sorry if I butchered some of those names. I don't think I'm familiar with some of those battles. Great characters, non-stop action, and a great story. Highly recommended. So if you're into military sci-fi, the Territory Wars has been really popular amongst that group of our readers. So give it a look. Next, we have the Epiphany Realms Book 2, Evolution by D.M. Hermakowski. And I'm going to go through the review of Book 1, Resurrection. It's a dark fantasy through and through. It's full of tense drama, adult themes, and a murderous psychopath. The author knew his genre, and he stayed true to the mark. The book doesn't try to dip its fingers into other genres, just a dark, lit RPG, and it fills that niche perfectly. So if you are looking for a dark fantasy lit RPG, give this one a read. And then next, we have the new release of Book 3, Embers and Glory of Frostworld. And to talk about his book, we have Blake with us today. So I'm going to bring him on. Hey, Blake.
Hey, how's it going?
Welcome, welcome. So Frostworld, this is not your first series, and apparently you decided to go with quite a twist, Vikings and lit RPG. Mm-hmm. So tell us a little bit about Frostworld and how on earth you decided to combine those two elements together into a story.
So Frostworld, I would say it leans more game lit, and it has light game lit RPG elements in it. But I say it leans more into epic fantasy, and that's kind of my bread and butter is fantasy and epic fantasy. And so I kind of had this idea. This was a few years ago, but I was like, man, how cool would it be if there was a civilization that started on a planet like Hoth, like from Star Wars, where it's just an ice ball planet, and they used magic in order to survive the harsh elements on that planet. And so that's kind of how the seed of Frostworld was planted in my mind, and I just kind of went with it. And then that's kind of when I was like, well, it'd be cool if the characters were in this like really rigid class system. And then that's when I started getting into more lit RPG books. And I was like, that fits really well because, you know, there could be like a caste system in the world building, but there could actually be stats associated with those classes. And then I was like, it'd be really cool if there was a character that was born classless and he's just kind of like a low-level NPC. And then through a stroke of fate, he is able to level up and gain a class and then kind of climb the ranks. And so it's kind of a progression fantasy story. And in Frostworld Book 3, Embers and Glory, that's kind of where everything culminates into like this epic battle at the end. And really happy with where the characters all ended up at the end of the series.
Yeah. I think it's kind of common. Obviously, it's almost a natural switch over for lit RPG authors to be either former fantasy authors or aspiring fantasy authors. I feel like lit RPG has taken off a life of its own, and it's almost like the lit RPG is like almost a crutch for people that want to do high fantasy, but for some reason high fantasy isn't popular right now. So I see a lot of people that on both camps that it's like for one reason or another they're crossing over, and it completely makes sense. I mean, when you have as many famous and popular authors as we have that literally use Dungeons and Dragons to write their stories. It makes the world building so much simpler.
It does, and that's actually that's what I used for the basis of the stat system. Is I used Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition, and so a lot of those rules. In fact, when they pick up a weapon, it doesn't say like 5 to 10 damage. It says 2d6 damage, and so that's kind of what I used in order to shape the stats of this world and the leveling and the progression system as 5th edition, because that's what I know and that's what I've played for years at this point. So,
well, I'm not a published author yet. I'm working on 2. One is fantasy, more traditional, and one is lit RPG. And I see as I'm working on it the ease of which I don't have to explain things when it's in the lit RPG world versus when I have to have almost like my physics engine. I have to tap into it from time to time to so that you can attach and be in a believable fantasy world. And it's just like, I understand why it's so popular right now. And I very much enjoy the lit RPG genre. So I feel like reading the reviews for Frostworld, you kind of you use it lightly, delicately, versus some people that are just like stats all up in your grill. So that's really good. Tell us about some of your other works. This one, Frostworld, the reviews on it are fantastic. And so I think if anyone wants to take a look at it, take a look at book 1. I'm drawing a blank right now. I just had it up. What's book 1's name?
Ice and Blood.
Ice and Blood. Very well named. Fun Frostworld stuff. If you want that Cold World, check that out. But tell us some about your other series.
Yeah. So the first series I ever wrote was called Arc of Radiance, and it was like a young adult epic fantasy blend. And I wrote that back in 2018 and self-published it. And it didn't. I mean, I don't even think it made the money back that I put into it. And so that was just kind of me dipping my toes into the waters of being an author, a self-published author. And then it was actually Frostworld that got me in with Athon. And I was talking with Steve Bollier about Frostworld, and he kind of was looking through my backlist, and he said, hey, you have this other series that you've published, and it's kind of dead in the water. Like, what if we started by republishing these books that you had written? And republishing, give them new covers, give them a new coat of polish, all that fun stuff, and then we can do Frostworld after that. And I agreed, and so we ended up changing the name from Arc of Radiance to Fall of Radiance. And so that's a 5-book series. It came out in 2020, throughout 2020, and then this year the box set came out, and it's exceeded my wildest expectations, especially because when I tried to do it myself, it just kind of failed to launch. But
for a box set, you've got 4.6 star average review, over 600 reviews, which is pretty darn good considering that build up. So
people seem to like it, and I couldn't have done it without Athon and without Steve and Rhett. And the cool thing was when we were talking about doing the audiobooks. So I'm a big Brandon Sanderson fan. And like I read the whole Wheel of Time through audiobooks, and those were narrated by Michael Kramer and Kate Redding. And Steve was asking me, hey, who would you like to narrate this series? And I said, well, my dream, of course, would be Michael Kramer and Kate Redding, because the series alternates points of view between a male protagonist and a female protagonist. And so I was like, that would be really cool. But I was like, that's just my bucket list thing. And Steve's like, oh, well, let me see what I can do. And we ended up getting Michael Kramer and Kate Redding to narrate the audiobooks for that series. And
Fantastic.
So it was so cool to go through the process of them recording each book and then seeing the box set come together and hearing these really talented narrators bring these characters to life. And it was it was such a cool experience for my first series. And, I'm really grateful that we were able to do that.
That's awesome. Athon books, where dreams come true, right?
It's true. It's true.
No, that's really cool. That and I know we've done this for a couple different series where it's like there was a huge fad out there where it's like self-publishing is easy,
Mm-hmm.
No, it's not.
Mm-hmm.
there's there's a lot of misguided strategies, and I have people not in this genre that are trying to self-publish, and so they're starting by building their Instagram followers.
Mm-hmm.
It's like that is a key element to be getting published, is to build your Instagram followers. And it's like that doesn't necessarily translate into book sales,
Yeah.
and that doesn't get you catapulted into any top lists or anything like that. That just means you have 20 friends out of the 200 followers that are going to now buy your book. But glad it worked out so well for you, and now you can just concentrate on writing the books.
And that's what I love to do. And I think there are plenty of indie authors that can do both left and right side brain stuff, where they can be the creative and create the story, create the world, but then they can also do the marketing and the business and the finances. I can't do that. Like, I can do them each separately, but I can't do them together. And so it's great that I can just kind of focus on creating an awesome story and kind of leave the rest to the professionals.
Yeah, the indie world and the indie readers and stuff like that, it's just like, that's what they need to understand. It's like, that's why if you're going to go publishing an indie publish, it's like, it's really just so you can take some of the burden off of and keep the authors full-time authors, instead of going from full-time author to part-time marketing. Or if you're trying to become a full-time author, how can you both write and market and all this stuff like that? It's a huge job. I mean, there's a reason I'm on board and not even an author. So fantastic. What do you think's next? What do you think is next for Blake Arthur Peel?
So I'm currently working on 2 projects concurrently. One of them is an epic fantasy that I'm very, very excited about. Actually, I think it's the story. It's one of those where it's kind of like it's a bolt of lightning in the middle of the night, and you're like, whoa, like this is the story. Like, I have to write this. And so I've been having a lot of fun building the world, crafting the characters, and I'm about 20,000 words in, so I'm not even close to finishing it. But hopefully, early 2022, we'll be able to get that to the editors. So that's my epic fantasy project, and then my wife and I are actually working on a more of a hard traditional lit RPG series. So it's Frostworld is more light lit RPG. This is more of like your standard, you get sucked into a video game, lots of stats kind of lit RPG. And so those are the 2 series that we're working on, and both are going to be through Athon.
Do you remember, I'm trying to remember the name of it, early 90s or late 80s. It's literally starts out this guy playing a Nintendo, and then he gets sucked into his television and all the stuff gets sucked in. What's the name of that?
Is it a book or a movie?
It was a TV series. If you're in the comments, let us know what this series was. But I literally remember, it's like I was entranced at this. As a boy, he literally gets sucked into it. It becomes a Saturday morning cartoon, and he turns into a cartoon. But it's this guy really just playing an NES, and the world he's helping gets sucked into his TV. And he pulls out. He's got a sidekick, which is a Game Boy with like floating around and doing stuff, and he's got a power gun and all this stuff like that. And I was like, the thought that little childhood, my imagination as a child goes boom wild, and now as a full-grown adult with children, this is still a popular theme is pretty cool. So
you can kind of see that in the pop culture going back clear back into the 80s, like you were saying. But things like Tron, for example, the guy gets sucked into a video game, and that's, at the time it was cool and futuristic, and now it's kind of like
Captain N.
Is that the name of the show?
Neil just helped us out with that one. Captain N. Okay.
Oh, Neil narrated the Frostworld trilogy for audiobook, and he did an amazing job. Oh my gosh.
Oh, awesome. Well, I'll probably be listening to it soon, Neil. Thank you for that.
Yeah, he's an immensely talented narrator. I was very, very happy that he was able to narrate this series.
He gets that Viking gruff.
Yeah, he did. He did all the voices. He even was he was doing like different nationalities of Vikings. Like this is more of like a Norwegian accent. This is more of like a Danish accent. And then there was a couple other accents thrown in there. I was just like, wow, you're awesome.
Fantastic. All right. So you got there's 2 started sort of projects, early projects. When Steve convinced me to start writing my book, because he came to one of my D&D sessions. He's like, oh, you should just start writing it. It doesn't matter if it turns into anything. He said he's started more books than he's finished. And that guy's going on, what, 20 plus books. It's like, how many books can you start? And here I am, haven't published yet. And I've started 3 or 4 just to get some ideas jotted down for the future. But I'm about 80,000 into my first.
That's cool. Is it fantasy?
It's lit RPG. I had started my Dungeons and Dragons story, and I hit about 35,000. And then I had an idea for another one, and it was just so easy to write that I just kept going with it. And so anyway, hopefully we'll have something soon. But yeah, it's always exciting to talk about other authors. So if you had advice for a new upcoming author, someone working on a book, that hasn't published yet, what advice would you have for those? Because we always have aspiring authors listening in on these.
Sure. I guess the advice I would give is just to develop that daily writing habit. Even if you're only writing a few hundred words a day, I think the consistency is more important than the quantity or the quality. I think if you are a consistent writer, the quantity will naturally increase over time because you'll become faster at writing. You'll be able to formulate your words and get them on the page a lot easier with practice, but also the quality will improve. Practice makes perfect. So I think just developing that habit and just stick with it. Even if your first series, or your first book doesn't go anywhere, just shelve it, move on to the next one. And you never know, you might revisit that first series like I did. That first series I had kind of written off as like, well, I tried it, lesson learned, let's move on. But lo and behold, it was able to be repurposed and turned into a successful series. And so I would say just be consistent and don't give up.
Jack Adkins says amen to that. Steve actually gave me that advice the other day because I'd sort of made Wednesday mornings my go to the coffee shop and write day, and I would just sit there for 3 hours, and it's just like I'd have some momentum and I'd get a lot done, but it would really drift off. And he says, just try doing more like 1 hour a day rather than 4 hours, 5 hours at a time. So thanks for that advice. It sounds like it's good advice. Yeah, we're looking forward to your next couple projects. And then, of course, I think Frostworld is going to do well. And I think it's become kind of common that people are looking for trilogies. It's like we're doing one book at a time, therefore we can release these box sets that seem to do well. So looking forward to the future of Frostworld's success, as well as the next Captain In.
Thanks, John.
So, all right. Merry Christmas, everyone. I hope y'all all get lots of Athon books for Christmas presents, or whatever book series you're reading. I've been reading a ton of stuff that I think the whole community has come around and been fans of recently. So if you have a book that you've been reading, go ahead and comment it. It doesn't have to be Athon, just what you're looking forward to on your Christmas list. And we'll see y'all after Christmas. And next Tuesday, we're actually going to sit down with Rhett and Steve and talk about what this year has shown them in the publishing world. So come tune back in next week. Talk to y'all soon.